Here's a few news articles. There. So there's new malware here, never been seen before, that infects everything. Windows, Linux, Unix, and the router, which I've never heard of something that broad before. So they call it chaos, which repeatedly appears in it, and talk about how it uses a whole lot of staging servers, a whole lot of different attacks, of course, a lot of different CVEs, and then it tries to use password brute forcing on SSH. It uses F5 vulnerabilities. It sounds like quite a thing. And you see it's mostly in Europe, but there's to some extent in the United States. So anyway, that's a new type of threat. This is an interesting story. The U.S. talks about an Army major and wife that decided to leak military health data to Russia, which I don't know why that would be so valuable to Russia, but they were contacted. Let me get a paywall-free version of this. Reuters just needs a private window. At least that's what I think. A private window at Tor. Well, that's not what I wanted, but that might work. Well, that's kind of interesting in itself. Let's see if Tor works. 83%. Well, Tor connected. Well, okay, that works. I didn't mean to use Tor, but anyway, I'm using Tor, that's fine. So these guys were both doctors. The woman named Anna Grabalian, perhaps that's a Russian name, I don't know enough, but they got contacted in a sting operation by a U.S. representative pretending to represent the Russian government, and the wife said that she did it because she is motivated by patriotism towards Russia to provide any assistance. And he also said she breaks HIPAA and other laws all the time, and her husband is just a wimp to be squeamish about it. And they both went along with it and tried to deliver this medical data to Russia and got busted for it. So it's just kind of screwy. That wouldn't seem to me like high-value data. Anyway, I guess it's nice they caught them. And here's a big Reuters investigation, quite scandalous, explaining what happened to Iranian informants. And I heard some rumors about this before. Apparently, when the CIA recruits local people to spy for them, they prioritize them into how important they are and how likely the information they provide is to be valuable. And when they are considered not very valuable, they are given low security. And all these people got caught, and they got caught because the United States didn't bother to give them a secure communication channel. What they did, it's going to come up down here someplace, they have pictures of the web pages they made. In order to give them a way to deliver their data, they made a website like this, IranianGoals.com, which looks like a sports website, and it has a search engine. And this search engine is not just a search engine, it's also a login field. If you put in a password, you then get a chance to put up data. And they would give a different one of these sites to every individual asset they had, but they're all just simple copies of the same HTML, all very much identical, easily found, and the HTML code for the search bar includes type password. So it's pretty obvious what it is, not hard at all. Then you go to a login process, and then you can put in a hidden interface where you can type in data. And but the problem is they're all the same, they're not very well hidden, and so they're easy to find, and all these people were created this by this rudimentary procedure, using the same code everywhere. They were caught, which is pretty horrible, and the various members of the U.S. government are now apologizing, saying we don't want to treat our assets this way, and but we're not going to do anything to help them now. And so anyway, this reminds me of all the people we abandoned in Afghanistan. I don't know why any foreigners would help Americans anymore. We seem to treat our allies very shoddily, and it's far from the first time. So, as you know, a few days ago, Biden said the pandemic is over. People have lifted the mask mandates even in hospitals, and this is madness. Here's the rate of hospital admissions with COVID in Britain, which is typically 2 weeks ahead of us. And as you can see, it's not over at all. It's rising again in Britain. It will rise here soon. We'll have another big wave in the fall, and it is complete madness to abandon COVID precautions now. So just like that previous story, they will roll it back and then apologize for getting it wrong and then do it wrong again. So this is the stuff that newly mobilized Russian soldiers are supposed to provide for themselves, buying it out of their own money. And the list is kind of unbelievable. You have to provide your own backpack, sleeping bag, boots, underwear, socks, penknife, flashlight, batteries, food set, mug, spoon, lighter, washing accessories, helmet, bulletproof vests, and so on. They're all supposed to buy this themselves, and all 300,000 of them are supposed to buy it themselves at the same time in Russian stores that are, of course, run out of everything. So it's pretty much madness. I heard on Pod Save America as I was driving in that Putin has in fact admitted that this 300,000 call-up was a mistake, which is perhaps the first time he's ever admitted a mistake. So I hope they'll write something up about that and I can find out what he admitted and what he's going to do. But apparently Putin was pretty humiliated when both China and India told him to go pound salt and said they weren't going to give him any more weapons, they weren't going to give him any help, and he should forget about this stupid war, which is absolutely true, but he doesn't seem to have a friend in the world, and it apparently is affecting him. So another thing Russia did, which they're getting a lot of blowback for, is it hasn't been proven that Russia did it yet, but I think everybody knows it's Russia that did it. They bombed the Nord Stream pipeline, so it's leaking natural gas under the ocean just to deprive. So anyway, that appears the Russian Navy was found in that area. There's big leaks in the pipeline. It's bubbling up tons of natural gas, and this is cutting off the gas supply to Europe, which is the point. And NATO announced today, again, I heard it on Pod Save America driving in, they announced that this was a foreign attack on NATO property. And they haven't yet said that Russia did it. But if they do say Russia did it, that would bring Article 5 in. That would bring, if they must respond, united, all of NATO must respond to an attack from somebody on NATO property. So that may well bring NATO openly into a war against Russia. And that's why they're probably not in a hurry to deliberately admit that Russia did it. They would probably like to imagine that someone can do something less drastic than direct military punches back at Russia, but it's not clear that anybody can sway Putin with anything else. But maybe. So this guy claimed to have an original Frida Kahlo drawing, the most famous artist in Mexico, and he claimed he turned it into 10,000 NFTs and then burned it. So it exists only as NFTs. In order to make the NFTs more valuable, other people say it was probably a fake. Some people say this is a terrible thing to do to an original artwork. There's a lot of people screaming and yelling about it. One thing I haven't seen is anybody say it's illegal. I think it's legal to buy art and destroy it. It's just considered bad form. And we will see what happens. Also, it's a mighty funny thing to do now when the price of NFTs has fallen by like 95%. Seems very unlikely that he's going to get much money for it. But if it was a fake, then this would be a completely logical thing to do. So this is the Norwegian Navy has also declared they're afraid that Norway is the big source of liquid natural gas, and they have deployed their Navy to protect their offshore oil and gas installations because obviously they would be the ones that Russia would attack next because they're going to be the main suppliers for European gas. And Putin's goal, of course, is to deprive Europe of gas, so they have to lift the sanctions on him. And that seems, to me, inevitable. I mean, the energy costs in Britain and other European nations have risen by a factor of 10. I don't understand how anybody can endure this. The British government under Liz Truss has made huge borrowing in order to give people huge rebates to offset the price of gas, and that appeared to have a disastrous effect on their markets and the pound, to where they had to have some emergency action by their central bank to cope with it this week. So it is absolutely true that the gas prices are really hurting Europe, and I don't think they can really keep this up much longer, although so far they're keeping a united front against Russia. But I would imagine that Italy will pull out now that they put the fascist in charge, who is naturally not inclined to fight against Russia. So this is something I've seen a lot of reports, but this is the Congressional Budget Office. Half the country is this invisible line at the bottom of the chart. This is the total family wealth. In fact, if you look at it in more detail, a lot of, if the bottom, this is the total family wealth of, I think, the bottom half, and it was zero. until 2007, and then it went negative. Half the people in America are $10,000 in debt, is what this means. And this is all, people have been screaming about this for decades. Are American, ever since about the 80s, ever since the Reagan tax cuts and the policies, the rich have been getting richer and the poor have been getting poorer, until a lot of Americans live at a very bad level of poverty, and our system does not seem to be evening it up at all. So San Francisco is having sweeps of the homeless people where they come in the middle of the night and take away their sleeping bags and stuff and tell them to move along. And that is, it turns out, illegal. You can't just take away everything they have and make them move. You have to give them somewhere to go, some kind of shelter. And they're doing it without giving them some kind of shelter, so we'll see what comes of this. Eric Adams is doing the same thing in New York City. This is usually what happens when you get a new tough-on-crime mayor to come in to sweep up the problem. All they can do is move them to some other neighborhood so you don't see them anymore. We'll see if anybody can come up with any better solution in San Francisco, but no one ever has. And this one was kind of interesting. I wasn't terribly impressed with the science of this, but these people are testing to find out what happens when people are not busy. And the main study showed he put people in a magnetic resonance image and tested them when they were busy doing a task and when they were not busy doing a task, and showed that when they're not busy doing a task, they report more depression, more worrying about their own appearance to others and their self-image and their flaws and criticizing themselves and things like that. And, you know, sounds reasonable. This is very much what any Buddhist book would tell you, that people who don't train their mind will use their mind in a harmful way, in foolish fantasies that just upset them about things and make them miserable. So, anyway, there's some sort of science justifying that. All right, let me stop this recording. And